If I have a good day, I sing. I sing joyous songs. I write my own music, and like I feel like it's gonna be a good day. I feel like all my dreams are gonna come true just because of the music I'm writing, and I feel like I get to finally let it all out. Imagine all the people living for today.
Most of my art is just random stuff that I just like drawing, but other times I like to have a meaning behind it. Like if there's a police shooting that happens, I like to draw something to represent my anger or my feelings towards it. I get to put what I have in my head, either be negative or positive, just on paper, just like be creative about it, just express how I'm feeling at that time, or just how my day was.
In the fall, I do cross country, and in the spring, I will do track and field, and in like the summer, late spring, I'll do triathlons. There are two distances that I like to do is sprint and Olympic distance. The sprint is like a 400-meter swim-ish, and then 12-mile bike, and then 5K, and then the Olympic is supposed to be 2 times that. I've only done one Olympic distance, and that was last year at the end of the summer, and for that one I would train for like 2, 3, 4 hours a day. But it was really fun. I really loved doing it.
Stress to me is when I start to like panic and start to overthink things, and I feel like I'm in this box that I can't get out of, and it's like getting closer and tighter into me, and there's like no way I can escape.
Stress for me just feels like a weight that just kind of like gets heavier every day and like it's like it feels very constricting, you know?
Just day-to-day stress is just feeling that I need to operate at 110% at all times.
Life gets so much harder for adolescents. Parents are less nurturing and more demanding. They expect more.
School is always like that overhanging cloud.
Every year I get more stressed, obviously.
The whole college experience, applications and stuff, that was stressful.
The amount of stress for kids about grades, about that omnipresent sort of worry about, are my grades going to be good enough? Can I get into college? That's the stress that I think, so many teens are feeling, and really it's hurting.
I started like missing school to the point where like my attendance was a bit sketchy. And the reason for that was just like a lot of other things, like home situations, school situations, things that I have to do after school, and it just all started to pile up.
Like I just can't operate to my full potential. I'm either tired, drowsy, I'm like out of it, just don't want to do anything that I usually do.
If you're in that state all the time, physiologically, the change is profound. When stress gets chronic, you're never really relieving the body of these changes, these physiological changes. They can start to get chronic. In other words, you could get chronically high cortisol levels, and that might interfere with sleep, with concentration. We see it a lot in our patients that come in with complaints of memory loss.
Whenever I go to bed, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll start like wandering my living room, and I feel half asleep, half awake, and like I feel like I can't like walk straight, and like I'm walking around circling my house again and again, and like my heart starts pumping, and like I can feel myself shaking and stuff like that until like I calm myself down and can return to my bed.
Stress initiates a lot of signals. You get the amygdala is an emotional center in the brain, and it sends out a distress signal. You get a flood of adrenaline, and that gets into your bloodstream, and it makes your heart beat fast. And then cortisol levels rise, and together these are preparing the body for battle.
Like sweating, sometimes I'll like kind of just like shake nervously. I'll be kind of antsy and like on edge, but at the same time I get really tired.
Our bodies are designed to deal with challenges in life and responding, with stress hormones, etc. But our bodies are also very well designed to de-stress. And I think that's useful to remember. Each person has to kind of find out what works for them.
I cope with my stress with music. I feel like I finally get to release all the stress that I'm experiencing, and people don't even know that I have stress. So it's kind of like music is like my mask for stress.
A combination of listening to music and drawing, is probably the best thing that I do. I don't know, just like when I'm listening to music and drawing, I'm just in my space and in my head, and just gives me time to just think about stuff, just like resolve things that I need to resolve in my head. And it's just like a way that I can isolate myself without having to physically isolate myself.
But also, meditation, yoga, exercise in general, it's also helping restore a more normal balance.
Exercise is definitely a big thing for me. If I'm working hard and like kind of putting my all into a long distance run or something, my mind kind of just goes blank. I kind of get into this weird meditative place. It's calming in the way that like you don't really have to focus on anything.
But then there's also what we're learning as we're growing, and that is how to find your sweet spot, I guess, of what's the right amount of challenge, what's the right amount of stress that feels invigorating and not paralyzing.
Stress is something that everybody deals with, and everybody deals with it a different way. And so once you find your way of dealing with it, it's good to always be able to go back to that.
Some kids will paint, right, or have an artistic outlet to relieve stress. Some kids, like me, will do a sport or physical activity. Some people will, journal or meditate or listen to music or make music. There's something different for everyone that works. It's important to find that and to stick with it, especially because usually it's something that you love to do.
OneBlair is a student-led social justice club here at Blair, and basically our two objectives are to unify the Blair community and make it inclusive, as well as raise student voices, so empower students to do what they feel is right.
OneBlair's main mission is to promote inclusivity as well as empower student voices. So a lot of times in school and among younger people in general, they feel like they don't have a space to really get their ideas out into the world. They feel kind of disempowered when they see so many adults in charge and feel a little bit hopeless in school. So OneBlair is really here to tell students, hey, you can use your voice. You can do so much despite your age.
OneBlair was formed out of an event that we did called Blair Interracial Dialogue. And we did Blair Interracial Dialogue, which is a week-long series of interracial discussions and activities. After school, we decided that we wanted to expand a little bit and go beyond just interracial dialogues, get involved in student clubs and activities.
Our biggest project that we do every year is called Interracial Dialogue. And it started a few years ago when kids really just wanted to have a space to talk about controversial issues with different kinds of people.
The purpose of the dialogues is just to give kids the space and help to build the capacity in kids to discuss controversial issues and things that are on their mind. We've also started this year an initiative called Blair Friends Network. And the Blair Friends Network, we have, I think, 23 ninth graders that volunteer to be part of the project, and we have assigned them to small groups to diversify their friend group. We put them in groups and we give them opportunities in school and out of school to meet and build good bonds.
Blair is a very diverse school, and so OneBlair really wants to bring all those different groups together so that we can accomplish really great things, because we all believe that great things come
when we have different perspectives and people from different places working together.
The one that seems to be taking a lot of time now is our project called Conexiones. And Conexiones involves ESOL students teaching Spanish to teachers and helping those teachers better develop relationships with their Latino students, particularly ESOL students, and helps those teachers better teach content.
Right now we are working on activism, which is happening in April. We are recruiting student artists to share their art that expresses any form of activism that's meaningful to them.
We have often taken initiatives that have come from the community. For example, a lot of the stuff that was done on gun control. MoCo for Change is an organization that sprouted up last year. All the walkouts, things like that. Those definitely spread beyond the halls of Blair.
People outside of the community know that OneBlair exists, and when they need youth activists or youth leaders, they reach out to OneBlair. So that kind of connects us with the community.
The second main vision or purpose of OneBlair is student empowerment. We want students to have elevated levels of voice and control over what it is they do here. Ultimately, this place exists for the benefit of the students, and so OneBlair feels as though students should have an opportunity to direct some of what happens.
By giving students the chance to run their own projects, talk about their own ideas without having to, have an adult telling them what to do. It gives you a sense of empowerment.
If you are interested in student voice, you are interested in making this place a more inclusive place and integrating our student body a little bit better than it currently is, come out and find some OneBlair leaders. And usually we meet every Thursday and Friday during lunches in room 222.
We hold events all throughout the year, and they're really a great way to talk about what you care about, to express your feelings, to discuss things that you normally wouldn't in a class setting or even at home. Some people don't get the opportunity to talk about those things. And if you're interested in leading projects or you have a lot of ideas of your own, anyone can come to us and propose something and we'll help you get it done.
I grew up in Anacostia. I was born in 1928, so that was quite some time ago. And Anacostia was quite different. First of all, the entire city was segregated, and for the most part, black children, black parents lived in Anacostia if they lived east of the river. The difference between now and then was that we were a real community. We had a drugstore, doctors, dentists, every kind of profession that you would want. We were really self-contained. And so there were some people who never left Anacostia, never crossed the bridge to go into Washington. My mother, however, had gone to Teachers College. She was from, I'll call, the other side of the river, the real Washington, D.C. So she made sure that we took trips to the city every week. Our days in Anacostia at that time were centered around the school, the church, and the community centers. And everybody went to all of those things. There was a school in Anacostia that was predominantly white. Well, not predominantly, it was white. Blacks did not go to white schools. So we had to pass that school and go into the city to go to school. So we drove past that school every day and went into the city. But even from elementary school, because we knew about segregation but didn't really know about segregation as children, the teachers constantly impressed upon us the importance of education. At Dunbar, which is the school that I attended, had some sort of arrangement. I was never quite sure what that arrangement was with several of the Ivy League schools that said, we will take one student a year from your high school. So my first year there, which was 9th grade, I was sitting in a Latin class. I love language and math. Those are my two loves. I was sitting in a Latin class, and I have a facility with the languages. Well, I had. So she called on me. She said, the girl in the green dress, there's certain things that always stick in your mind, you know. The girl in the green dress. So finally I realized she was talking. She walked back to me, and I said, oh. And she said, well, I couldn't tell it was a sweater, you know. So she said, okay, read whatever. And I read it, just like that, you know. And from that moment on, I was the one who was going to go to Smith. After I was selected to go to Smith, my education doubled, I'll say, in intensity. If you went to Dunbar, it was expected that you were going to college and that you were going to do well. Nobody ever said, well, I don't think you can do this, you know, I don't think you can do this. It was always the next step, harder, harder. You've got to be twice as good to get half as much. I was the only black in my class. This was a totally new experience for me because I had never met any white people. I had been totally segregated all this time. And it was traumatic, I'll say. It was traumatic. One of the girls from the Midwest or the West actually came up to me and asked me if I had a tail. So, having gone to Dunbar, having been valedictorian at Dunbar, having gotten all sorts of awards and all that sort of thing, I still got asked, do you have a tail? And there were a lot of little things like that that had an impact on me. Well, I've been a first on a lot of things, all because of the pressure of the teachers, the pressures of my parents, the pressures of my community to represent them, you know, the best of them, they said. But the thing that I enjoyed most when I came back the first time, they said, well, you're still you. And I loved that. I just loved that I was still me, even though I had fought all these battles all the way through. What happened was computers came into being. And I said, oh, computers, you know, math, you know, this is a good thing. So I applied, it was to the Census Bureau. That was the first computer operation, and was accepted and rose on up, I guess. I was assigned to University of Michigan to work on a project with Dr. Salk. When I got off the plane, the guy came up to me and came up to us and says to him, welcome to, you know, the Salk project and what have you, what have you. And so Jim, that was his name, looked at him and he said, she's in charge. And he was a little embarrassed, but it's those little things that happen all during your career. We came out here and we looked at a house in Bethesda. When we walked up to the door, the salesman looked out and then climbed out the kitchen window. So we said, okay, that's what we have to deal with out here. At that point, I switched into human rights, civil rights. It was at that point that I said, this is not right. So I was on the school board for 2 years because I had to run countywide, and blacks were 4% of the population, which meant that 96% of the population was not going to like me too much. So I won. I actually came in with the second highest number of votes. But I have enjoyed all the committees I've served on, a lot of them with education, a lot of them with school system, but also with housing because of that experience. With employment, I was on the Employment Commission because I looked around and we just weren't represented. As I said, people have told me, even up to the county executive, that they have stood on our shoulders. Not just me. I'm not just talking about me. I'm talking about a whole group of us who went through that period of time when women were not supposed to do anything. Teaching, okay. Nursing, that sort of thing. Women just weren't supposed to do anything except those traditional stereotypes that men had placed on us. Not everybody was prejudiced. Today, not everybody is prejudiced. In fact, I think all of our hope right now is on the younger generation. I really believe that sincerely, and I hope that you all will pick up the mantle of human rights and civil rights and run with it. Education is the key. In my community, that has always been the mantra. Education is the key. Don't let anything that happens to you in the school turn that around. Try to get all from your teachers that you can. You can be as good as anybody else. As I told you, that's what I left school with. I'm as good as anybody else, better than some, not so good as others, right? So once you learn that lesson, you get confidence. And once you get confidence, you can fight the battles.
Autonomous cars, connected medical sensors, the smart home. These are all technologies that will be enabled by the next generation of wireless technology, known as 5G. But many local residents are concerned about whether the technology could have health consequences or whether ugly towers could impact their property values. So should local governments allow 5G development or restrict it? The benefits of 5G are simple. More bandwidth, lower latency, more devices connected at once. In addition to faster Netflix, this will have implications for new types of technology like autonomous cars.
It's more than fast. I mean, fast is a key element to it. I tell people it's like connecting a fiber optic cable to your phone, but it goes beyond that. The technology of 5G puts you in a world of no latency, and what that means is just instantaneous. And it's a real-time network. And think about the applications that require instantaneous connectivity. And the first one we all go to is autonomous cars, right? You do not want to be in a car that's relying on network connectivity if there's any latency.
You don't want buffering when you're trying to figure out if you're going to pass that truck or not.
Exactly, or if a child comes out in front of a car. You don't want buffering if a child runs out in front of a car.
When we look at 5G, it's basically every other industry now understands how that technology will modify, their business. So this is why 5G is one of the most significant transitions we'll have. We'll drive a whole new cycle of innovation. We'll catalyze the development of new devices and device categories beyond the smartphone. And that's going to go across not only the consumer and the enterprise, but also multiple industrial segments.
Imagine in 5 years that you're stuck on a flip phone with no keyboard. That's kind of like the analogy. If you couldn't text or use data plans, how would you feel about your phone today if you were not able in Montgomery County to use a smartphone? That would not be a good situation. Well, 5G is going to be such a
huge leap forward in capacity. We don't know what the next generation of devices is going to offer. We don't know how we're going to use them, but we know it's going to be a lot more powerful than it is today. And so we want to be part of that. We don't want people to live in Montgomery County and not have the ability to connect to their internet with their phones and use everything that's available to people in this world. And so we've got to face up to that reality and make the zoning change that allows it.
There have been some issues deploying 5G. The current cell network consists of around 200,000 cell towers across the country, which can have a range of up to 19 miles. In order to achieve faster speeds, 5G relies on a network of small cell towers, or small cells, which only have a range of a few thousand feet. That means companies need to build a lot more small cells to cover the same range that they already did. According to one estimate, there will be over 800,000 small cells by 2026 in the US. But the small range also means that towers have to be much closer to communities than previously, which means the companies have come into conflict with zoning restrictions in many areas, like Montgomery County.
Well, the current rules around cell towers in a lot of the county are designed for those really tall towers that you might see from the highway. You know, it's a several hundred feet tall structure. It's a fake tree coming off of the highway. We have a requirement that one of those types of structures can't be closer than 300 feet to a residence. And for years, that was the type of infrastructure that we were establishing rules for. Now we have this challenge of the next generation of wireless will put antennas on street poles and street lights. And so if an antenna can't be closer than 300 feet to a house, then you can't put it anywhere in a neighborhood, and then you can't build a network. You can't have wireless service.
So why not just change the zoning restrictions so that small cells can be constructed closer to homes? Well, the Montgomery County Council tried to pass legislation doing just that, but they failed to pass it, in part due to community concerns about health consequences from the small cells.
The thing about small cells is they're shorter and they're going to be in neighborhoods. So your street light is going to go another maybe even 10 foot or more higher, your utility pole higher, and on top will be an antenna or several antennas. So it's a densification. It's more layers of radio frequency wireless radiation that's going to be in communities.
We have urged the FCC that they need to update their scientific standards around the radiation that is emitted from the antennas. The RF radiation is a very common type of radiation. It's not unlike what comes off the sun and the stars. We all live with radiation all around us. But there are concerns that if you get too close to a source of emitting it, you know, that's bad. That's why we're all encouraged to, you know, not put our phones to our head and use earphones instead, for example. And so what we have asked the FCC to do is to take the issue seriously and to do thorough evaluation of it. And we don't feel like they've done that.
While local governments debate the pros and cons of 5G, telecom companies have lobbied the federal government to preempt the authority of local government by passing them all together. They argue that a single federal framework would simplify deployment. But localities are concerned that such a system wouldn't take their concerns into account.
The Telecom Act in 1996 has been interpreted, it's an overreach of the statute to have it be interpreted in our circuit to mean that we can't talk about health. I think this is one of the most egregious issues here, and it should wake everyone up. Like, really? You can't talk about health? And when an official says they can't talk about health and that they can't make a decision based on health, I think we have to step back and take a look at this whole process and figure out a solution to it, because it's not okay to keep going saying, well, I can't think about health, I have to just keep going. No, that's not okay.
The county government is closest to the community, and we care the most about what people think about how the infrastructure looks, you know, as it's integrated into the environment around us. And so we want to be at the table to negotiate with the companies and ensure that, you know, we don't get duplicative equipment, or that we get the smallest equipment that we can, or that when there's a new pole goes up, if there's an old one that can come down, that it comes down. There's lots of ways in which we want to be able to manage the process. And in order to do that, we have to have some authority. So if the state government takes away our authority or the federal government takes away our authority, then we're just kind of observers. We can't do anything if, if the companies are putting up infrastructure in a way that we don't think is the best way to do it.
There are significant concerns that the localities and the cities and the states have, and we want to respect those. I think you can set up a national framework that takes some of those concerns into account, but also make sure that there's a consistent process across the board and that we can get that kind of investment in those facilities in the ground quickly.
So the companies all want to tap into our market. And so we think it's fair to charge them a fair rent to put their equipment on our public property or in our right-of-way, for them to play by fair rules that allow them to deploy, but do it in a way that's respectful. We think that there is a give and a take here. And so, unfortunately, what the FCC has done or wants to do, what many state legislators want to do, is just take us out of the equation and turn us into bystanders.
So where does that leave us? Well, 5G will enable exciting advances in technology, but there are also concerns about health risks and other consequences. But wherever you stand on the issue, the only way your opinion will matter is if local governments get a seat at the table, a seat that telecom companies and the FCC are trying to deny them.
So what makes you stressed?
A lot of things, actually.
Everything. People, boys, my mom, sports, grades, fighting with my family, health issues, homework, tests, my friends' well-being, not getting enough sleep, preparing for a job.
Well, speaking more generally, what tends to make me stressed is the feeling of a time constraint.
But mostly the consequences of whether getting an assignment done or not will determine whether or not I go to college and get a good job and have to live out on the street or not.
It's mostly the volume of work.
I only have so long after school to do things before my brain shuts down and decides it doesn't want to do anything anymore. I usually get stressed when I lose balance of things.
Like athletic sporting events, when I have a meet, I feel like there's a lot of pressure to perform.
Sometimes volleyball, which is the sport I play, also makes me stressed.
Managing, being able to participate in the arts and do activities that I enjoy.
Sometimes I'll have other things going on in my personal life that sort of hinder my ability to complete my schoolwork. I think home life actually makes me more stressed than school.
Usually family issues. I have to take care of my dog sometimes.
What stresses me out the most is definitely my parents and my little sister and my family.
Usually I get stressed out about my friends and their safety and my own safety.
So I always feel like I can solve everybody else's issues, but as I've learned, that's not how that works.
Just, making sure that I didn't say the wrong thing to someone or, screw over a friendship permanently.
When you see other people successful, it kind of makes you stress.
I want to be able to do everything to the best of my ability, and I can't say no to things, and I hate backing out of things.
Well, you're expected to excel at everything, and with that, you just have a lot of pressure on you.
When I'm stressed, I experience every emotion at once.
Emotions tend to go really intense. Everything, I get super angry really easily. I get super sad really easily.
I'm afraid to show that I'm stressed because I'm going to be seen as weak or vulnerable.
I get very anxious, which goes hand in hand with stress pretty much.
I worry about a lot of different things, panic.
When I'm stressed, I'm usually really angry. I get sad sometimes. I get extreme headaches.
Sometimes when I get super stressed, I start shaking.
Just get kind of overwhelmed with having to balance everything.
I think that's when I start to lose track of my organization, when I need it the most.
Sometimes I get angry when I'm overwhelmed and I'll just kind of freak out. Or sometimes I'll just cry.
I cry a lot, excessively.
When I'm stressed, I don't really experience emotions. I kind of just shut down. I'm in autopilot mode.
Get like anxious and kind of shut myself off.
I have a tendency to just shut down, and then when I do, I don't really feel anything at all. I just sort of exist.
Shut down. I think a lot of it is I do think I sort of end up feeling more tired than I usually would.
Worried is kind of the dominant emotion when I'm stressed out, and tired too because I don't get enough sleep.
Normally, I kind of just express it feeling tired.
And I'm always exhausted.
When I'm with people, I take it out on them in the wrong way.
You can say stuff you don't mean to other people, which can, then hurt them, or you can do some stupid stuff when you're stressed out. You can do damaging stuff.
So it kind of adds to the toxicity.
Definitely feel like this sort of like overwhelming hopelessness.
I tend to get frustrated at myself because I sometimes take it out on myself for not being able to do things.
So I feel like there's nothing that I do that will not make me stressed in some way.
Like nothing, I can never do anything that I want to again. And it's kind of like my chest gets tight.
I feel this kind of underlying sadness throughout the rest of the day, and I can't really feel happy.
It just feels like it feels like everything is pulling at me. It feels like I'm being pulled in just 100 different directions.
All of your limbs are attached to elastic bands, and there's something on the other end of the bands that's constantly pulling you.
I kind of feel like my brain is in a knot, and my emotions are in a knot.
Just some sort of tensions. I often tend to squeeze my fists or squeeze something.
You're it's kind of like I'm just all squeezed together. I'm like a little ball. That makes sense.
I would say it kind of feels like there's this kind of ball right here in my chest, and it can just make it hard to breathe.
It feels like someone's pushing down on me. It feels like my mind gets stuck on something, like it's a rut in the road and I just can't get past it.
I can't really think or act on anything.
Everything piles up and
I can't focus on any of it because there's just so much.
I feel like stress is how you feel when you can't sleep at night.
You're going up a roller coaster, but you just keep going up and you never go down.
I'm on a train, and the train is coming up on this canyon.
It feels like a rock on your shoulders, pressing you down.
If I'm walking on a road and it's crackling underneath my feet,
going down those never-ending elevators,
and you're trying to chisel it away one by one,
and it just splits open.
Things that spin around and you jump on it,
and I fall in and I just keep falling.
I know that I'm bound to fall into this canyon,
plunging into darkness,
and I can't go up.
You're sitting on one of those and you're all alone,
and you don't know when it's gonna stop.
But I need to keep going because there's that small possibility.
And the only way you can stop is getting off.
And I can't go back to the surface
if I just work hard enough.
But you can't get off because you're dizzy.
Even though you try your best to make it stop.
It's all a game. It's all a game.
It's one thing to say that gender is performed, and that's a little different from saying gender is performative. When we say gender is performed, we usually mean that we've taken on a role. We're acting in some way, and that our acting or our role playing is crucial to the gender that we are and the gender that we present to the world.
Recast me.
Metamorphosis.
My gender is not my body. Chance. My gender means nothing.
My gender defines my whole life.
Inferior. And I think that there's this hierarchy that gets drawn between sort of flamboyant faggotry or queer femininities or trans femininities as being somehow inferior or less legitimate than womanhood. Womanhood.
We act as if that being of a man or that being of a woman is actually an internal reality or something that's simply true about us, a fact about us. Actually, it's a phenomenon that's being produced all the time and reproduced all the time.
You can play the game, but you can never win.
My gender is not my body.
My gender means nothing.
Thank you.